It's February 8, 2024. Happy owners of PlayStation and clueless Steam users found a brand new co-op shooter on their virtual shelves called Helldivers 2. Never heard of the first game, never saw the developer before, and the gameplay trailer is most likely scripted, but I will give it a shot. But this trailer did not show a mere percent of the actual epicness of the game. Helldivers 2 can be described as a true spiritual successor of Starship Troopers, in a form of co-op shooter. You play as a nameless Helldiver, fighting the enemies of democracy in different corners of the galaxy, though you're not alone, but together with 3 brothers in arms, and most importantly with support from the Super Destroyer, hovering about the battlefield and laying down fire from guns that were taken from a World War II era battleship. The Super Destroyer doesn't shoot by itself. To call down a strike, you have to dial the required code and throw a charge beacon at the desired target, then run away from the location in question, presumably as far as you can. Aside from fire support, the Super Destroyer provides ammo, heavy weaponry, and many other ways of spreading freedom. The enemy has a tank, request a rocket launcher, and destroy it. A bug swarm is inbound, call in an airstrike. Need to defend a position? Place an automated turret, or become the turret. A comrade bravely lost his life.
Freedom.
Replenish your ranks with reinforcements. And if a really hard battle waits you, take control of an exosuit. In a year and a half of the game's existence, its arsenal nearly tripled in size, given a myriad of ways in creating your own builds. There are dozens of various assault rifles and shotguns, railguns, lasers, plasma guns, arc guns, bolters, gas weaponry, melee weapons, flamethrowers, autocannons, companion drones that have their own opinion about what's democratic enough. And everything is thought out to the smallest detail, having its own ballistics, alternative fire modes, penetration values, ricochet angles. Even the ergonomics of a weapon matters. A Helldiver with a pistol can switch between targets way faster than his teammate with a heavy machine gun. You can also try all of it in today's video sponsor. What? No, too small for that. And this is just the tip of an iceberg of absolutely absurd amount of details in the game. You can assist your teammates with reloading heavy support weapons, creating dedicated anti-tank squads. You can activate SAM sites scattered around the map, which then will automatically shoot down any airborne hostiles. Or find a static artillery piece, load it up, and use it for its intended purpose. Even seemingly small and insignificant things in the game have their own physics and collision. The key features of Helldivers 2 are a well-maintained balance between realism and arcadeness and extremely cinematographic visuals. The game is well aware of that and masterfully plays its trump cards. If a bomb lands on a battlefield, don't worry, it will make a proper... If you shoot down a transport ship right above your head, then... Getting tired of explosive barrels? How about some malfunctioned and unstable nuclear hell bombs? There is a hell bomb.
There's a hell bomb, you say?
Forests and meadows turn into moon-like landscapes after mere minutes of fierce fighting, where craters work as an excellent cover. Meanwhile, other squads will pound the enemy's positions in the background. Despite playing as a heavily armed soldier, he is still a mere human who is thrown into the heat of war. Literally. You're just a cog in a galaxy-wide conflict. Battles are happening not just on some ordinary maps, but on planets in the galaxy born from the all-out war between humanity and 3 different extraterrestrial races. Along with other players, you liberate planets and entire space sectors, decide where it could be strategically important to deal a blow, and figure out in a democratic way where we should relocate available resources. Together, we held the first Automaton onslaught on Malevlon Creek. Together, we crushed the Meridian supercolony of bugs. Together, we witnessed the consequences of our actions with tears in our eyes as a black hole tore apart Angel's venture. The story of the game develops in real time. Nearly every week something happens in the galaxy that requires immediate intervention of Helldivers, who decide the fate of Super-Earth shoulder to shoulder. In the now distant Otis, my father described Paul Verhoeven's movie as a true boys' film, the kind of movie that makes kids from all over the neighborhood gather together and play with a wide arsenal of tree branches. Helldivers 2 is an embodiment of all the militaristic fantasies of little brats that we all always carry somewhere deep inside our souls. While playing the game, sometimes you catch a strong feeling that it was created by a bunch of kids with fertile imagination, whose favorite toy was a set of plastic army men.
Yes! Woo-hoo!
Every explosion and visual effect is slightly overdone. Every voice line is just a little bit over the top. Enough to make the game feel like one big propaganda movie, colliding with a harsh and cruel reality. The satire of Starship Troopers is a child's play compared to the lore of Helldivers 2. We are talking about such a grotesque caricature where even the words democracy and freedom have lost any original meaning and turned into some kind of godlike beings.
No! Sweet liberty!
Do you suffer from the guilt of fighting former Super-Earth citizens? Don't worry, soldier, the aliens have stripped them of their ability to vote, so squeeze that flamethrower trigger tight.
For Super-Earth!
By the end of February 2024, only some mountain monks hadn't heard of Helldivers 2. The players absolutely fell in love with this game.
That's freedom. Awesome. How is it that regular gameplay from Helldivers 2 clears almost any trailer?
From all the corners of the internet, you could hear,
I think it has a real chance to win Game of the Year in 2024.
Helldivers 2 is freaking awesome.
This is one of the greatest games that I've ever played, especially a game that's co-op.
the number of concurrent players exploded, almost reaching 500,000 only in Steam, with more than 700,000 on both platforms combined. In 3 months, the game sold 12 million copies, becoming the third best-selling game in the US in 2024. Helldivers flooded Comic Cons. Game journalists unanimously praised the game.
This year, the Game Award goes to Helldivers 2.
Helldivers 2.
Helldivers 2.
However, after several dozens of hours, you start to feel that something is not right. Despite the fact that you are playing a co-op shooter, seemingly all about helping your comrades and working as a team, sometimes you feel alone, detached, unnecessary.
Он стоит, пытается с квазаром попасть.
To figure out what's going on, let's go back to the very beginning. 2015. A small team of Swedish developers Arrowhead Game Studios had just released the co-op 2D top-down shooter Helldivers. Soon after that, the CEO of the studio at the time, Johan Pilstedt, came up with a simple yet genius idea. Let's do the same thing but in 3D. What started as a small indie project quickly grew into a AA game. And then, after showing the game prototype to Sony, which at the time was seriously interested in live service games,
No time to read a list. Approved!
Helldivers 2 had officially hit AAA status. Frequent changes in the project budget caused regular and large-scale redesigns of the game, which had a far from positive impact on its technical depth. For Pilstedt himself, it was the first project of such a scale, for which he was completely unprepared to direct.
We were still retaining our small team ways of working. Very flexible, very dynamic. We can just turn around, make a decision on the fly, everybody's aware. But once we grew to 35 and eventually up to 40, up to 60, up to 100, it creates not only chaos within the project, but it creates chaos in the working condition of the company.
Additional fuel to this dumpster fire was thrown by Autodex Stingray, a truly Swedish game engine that is even taught in some schools in the country, but it is poorly known outside of Scandinavian peninsula, which didn't help at all with the studio's steady growth. February 8, 2024, the game finally goes live and quickly faces a new problem: player retention. Initially, Arrowhead had been solving this issue by finalizing unfinished or scrapped content, but after a couple of months, it ran out. But these deadlines must be met. From now on, the quality of new patches approached the state of freedom, while the list of known issues quietly occupied 2/3 of every patch note. The game slowly but steadily turned into a technological nightmare, full of bugs, crawling with them. Infinite lock-on, missing head, missing everything, missing assets, misaligned scopes, falling through textures, getting stuck in textures, crashes without reason, crashes with reason, the return of Solid Snake,
Kept you waiting, huh?
infinite deploying, infinite grenades, space programs, performance drops, and mission softlocks. Use the Steam, every player on the map stops running. Press the escape, say goodbye to your frames. Enter the mech while carrying a shield, If you hosted a game via PlayStation, then Railgun starts to nearly one-shot Bile Titans. But if you're not the host, then all your fire weapons stop working. Soft lock while using Arc Thrower, Spear is still locking on, hyperspace tanks, gravitational anomalies, Helldiver forgets how to aim, aliens board the ship, and Super Destroyer spends a year's supply of ammunition. Some of these bugs were fixed very quickly, others exist to this day, and the rest of them appeared like mushrooms after the rain with every new patch. One day I played together with a friend who hadn't logged into Helldivers 2 for quite some time, and we had a dialogue somewhat like this.
Ooh, I wanna check out the new class of rocket launcher.
Don't do it, the fuse goes off when a mosquito flies by, you will doom us all.
Alright then, I heard the spear is finally fixed. Is it any good now?
It's good, but by using it you risk causing a crash, so I don't recommend it.
I'm just taking a ballistic shield then.
Dude,
what?
It's bugged. If you go prone with it on a back, you will not be able to stand. Oh well, I guess it's time to buy a new computer. Since August 2025, players started to report frequent hard locks, so severe they could literally damage hardware. It seems that only the owners of high-end PCs were affected, which is exactly the case for major Helldivers 2 content creators.
Helldivers 2 hard-locked my PC and very likely played a role in my CPU dying.
The monitor started flickering and twitching, and I was immediately concerned for my graphics card.
I lost a Samsung 870 EVO 4TB SSD.
The problem is very likely to be eventually resolved, but if it isn't definitive proof of the horrendous technical state of the game, then I don't even know what is. Surely the game will make up for it in some stellar game design, right? To begin with, let's pay attention to the level design of Helldivers 2, actually to its complete absence. The vast majority, and at the time of the game release literally every map in the game, could be effectively described as a field with rocks. An almost perfectly flat surface with minimal amount of cover and randomly scattered objectives. To be fair, such maps work great if you play in a group of friends with voice chat. Thus, it is entirely in your hands how to approach the mission. Nothing holds you back.
You gotta do superhero landing. Wait for it!
The entire map is your sandbox, your blank canvas of destruction. However, while playing with randoms, such level design backfires, and not in a good way. Let's imagine a typical team of 4 players who have never met each other before. Remember my previous video? Every player thinks about himself first and achieves his own goals. One of the players is a stubborn perfectionist who wants to wipe the area clean. The other one is a speedrunner who rushes the main objective in order to escape from the planet's surface as fast as possible. The third one pursues points of interest to farm resources for his upgrades. And finally, the fourth one simply presses the quick play button to kick tyranny and chew Libergun. And now we put them on a completely open map where you can see everything that the game has to offer from the very beginning of the match. In such conditions, even some well-coordinated teams often resort to spreading thin around the map, walking away from the teammates while being lured by the tasty smell of breadcrumbs. In many other co-op shooters, maps usually resemble a straight hallway. While walking through it, you will inevitably meet all points of interest and satisfy the needs of every member of the party. And the separation from your team occurs only if someone runs too far forward or falls too far behind. The open maps of Helldivers 2 present an additional access to traverse around the level, thus multiplying the issue. You wouldn't believe this, but it was somehow repeated in Deep Rock Galactic by introducing deep scan missions in Season 5, which generates an overly complicated map with multiple paths to explore, with some well-expected results. The origin of such level design is easily explainable if you remember the number 2 in the game's title. In fact, all the studio did was slap the third dimension onto the predecessor, without giving any reason to players to stick together. While in the first game Helldivers were bounded by the borders of shared screen and couldn't cross them in any circumstances, the sequel has none of it due to changed camera placement, and the players are free to roam everywhere on the map. So they happily do just that. The next side of the problem of the game open maps is tightly connected to sadly weak design of factions that oppose Helldivers. Say hello to Terminids.
Hi.
A customary Zerg-like race that fights in overwhelming numbers that exert never-ending pressure. This faction presents a wide and diverse roster of enemies, each with a unique role in battle, such as a bug that has only melee attack, 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 and perhaps the most important of them all, a bug that has only melee attack. Yes, there are a couple of bugs that can shoot, but this spew has such a pathetic range that can be safely considered as another melee attack. Yes, there are invisible bugs and flying bugs. However, in most cases they spawn only in close proximity to their corresponding layers, which can be destroyed, thus completely excluding an enemy from already scarce roster. Some nests can even be destroyed during literally the first seconds of the game, and even such a small set of enemies work just fine in confined spaces, surrounding the players and forcing them any corner. If there is one. Because the maps of Helldivers 2 are huge. And free space is a resource for kiting, making it a nearly fail-proof tactic against bugs, especially if you can simply run away from a good chunk of the swarm. Now top it off with a stupid amount of armored enemies at the moment of the game release, which rendered you practically useless if you took anything but any anti-armor weapon, and now you can fully grasp what the players back in the day often called the game Hellkiters.
Pirate, why are you walking, bro?
And do you know what's the most stupid part in all this? Despite all the critical flaws in its design, Terminids currently is my favorite faction to play against. Simply because they're honestly trying. Bugs feel like the force of nature that goes all out in attempts to stop Helldivers, and they will eat your life in a blink of an eye if you stand still, even for a moment. Unlike the Automaton faction, which consists of Terminators but a little bit different, Dreadnoughts and Star Wars. If bugs overfavor melee enemies, then bots, on the contrary, are armed to the teeth with machine guns, tank cannons and rocket launchers. When such a faction appears on the maps of Helldivers 2, we receive a never-ending stream of Space Vietnam memes. So how did Arrowhead address this issue? Simple, by giving bots Stormtrooper aim half a year after the game release, which led to quite irritating gameplay filled with randomness. In one battle you can run in circles around the entire armies of clankers and live without a scratch, and in another you encounter an aimbot from all of a sudden.
Let's go gambling! Aw, dang it! Aw, dang it! Aw, dang it! Aw, dang it!
As a result, Automatons feel like an opponent that sometimes shamelessly gives in to the player, and their random nature doesn't let Helldivers properly learn from their mistakes. Sometimes bots allow you to do some absurdly reckless things that rely on sheer luck, and they actually work out! Because you see, the menacing kill machine failed to hit a target right before its nose. Also, bots love to ragdoll a player. Every single time. We heard you like to suddenly lose control of the character, don't you? If you add to the general monotony of enemies and utter absence of random events, then we get an extremely repetitive gameplay with an incredibly low skill ceiling. I adore Deep Rock Galactic for its feeling of mystery and unknowingness of what awaits you on a path ahead. Every new cave feels like a kinder surprise, where you have to adapt to its contents and quirks on the fly. Helldivers 2 severely lacks such moments. Some unplanned rescue operations, sudden boss encounters, and other situations that require quick decision-making and fast changing of plans are simply not present here. But the complete misunderstanding between the developers and the players is what actually tipped the crowd over the edge. You see, Arrowhead initially wanted to make a hardcore, sweetie co-op shooter where the players have to approach every mission with full seriousness, assigning specific roles to each Helldiver and working as a team. So what did the players want?
Have a taste of democracy! Fire in the hole! Objective critical strategy. Parkour!
During the first months since release, the developers periodically nerfed some beloved toys of the community. Oh, you really liked a Raptor? A bolter sniper rifle that shoots fragmentation bolts? Then remove the shrapnel, get rid of the only trait that makes the gun unique, got used to burning the legs of charger bugs with a flamethrower, take away its ability to deal damage through armor. And that was right before the release of Freedom Flame Warband, which is themed entirely around fire weapons. Oh, don't cry. Here, take it. An anti-tank Terminid grenade. Have fun!
The charges in my experiments range from 3 to 6 thermites. Those results are pretty awful. For an armor penetrating type grenade is pretty terrible.
Дядя Петя, ты дурак?
Such actions of the developers further reduce the already low diversity of builds. Not because some of them were better than the others, but mostly because a lot of loadouts become genuinely unfun to play, while the other half of the equipment was still bugged beyond any comprehension. Poorly thought out maps, amateur game design mistakes, repetitive gameplay, a streak of, to put it lightly, unpopular balance decisions, and many more led to deep cracks in the public image of the game. The complaints about the problems that were mostly ignored before were becoming louder and louder. Doubts, petitions, and threats started to pile on. The game was review bombed. Again, the number of concurrent players began to decline.
I won.
The trend of worshipping the game shifted towards the trend of hate in a matter of months.
Helldivers 2 has lost 90% of its players.
It has lost roughly 90% of its player base.
Helldivers 2 has lost 90% of its players on PC.
Helldivers 2 has lost 90% of its player base.
People wish to see Helldivers 2 dive into hell. The history of Helldivers 2 is an emotional seesaw without breaks. Every win that the developers managed to pull off was sure to be followed by some finest cringe in the next couple of weeks or days. In September 2024, shortly after a nuclear fallout caused by Escalation of Freedom update, where the genius mind of Arrow had for sure reached its peak, the developers rolled out a massive 60-day plan to save the game. In reality though, that was more like a panic attempt to get the players' trust back in the cheapest way possible. The enemies were nerfed to the ground in cold blood, while a cargo train filled with buffs arrived at the Helldivers arsenal. A Raptor got its shrapnel back, the old visual effects of flamethrower returned, Termite grenade turned into one of the best picks on the Bugs front lines, and crossbow becomes the closest thing to a full-auto nuclear launcher. Okay, not to such a degree, but my point is that Helldivers 2 before and after 60-day patch feels like two completely different games. As a result of such an extensive rebalance, the power level of just one player has increased to the point where he is able to effectively fight alone, sometimes stopping entire reinforcement waves of enemies all by himself. Arrow had seduced its player base with something they craved for a long time, an unlimited power, and the people gladly returned. On the one hand, such balance decision removes major restrictions in creating unique loadouts, and pretty much eliminates any frustrations that might be caused by teammates wandering alone, because now a well-equipped Helldiver is a one-man army. On the other hand, the co-op aspect of the game now suffers even more. Why should I stick together with a team when a max difficulty mission with a full lobby turns into a cakewalk, pretty much indistinguishable from a duck hunting session evolving for rednecks paired with a couple of beer six-packs? And a relatively new Illuminate faction follows this trend. This hostile collection of urban legends about UFOs with obligatory flying sources and tripods under the domes of force shields presents a well-maintained balance between melee and ranged enemies, somehow inheriting the key issues of both previous factions and simultaneously getting a completely new one. Watchers. This is the only Illuminate unit that can set off an alarm, while having a characteristic silhouette, bright coloring, and spawns alone. In any other shooter that would be considered a well-game design choice, but in Helldivers 2 maps it becomes too easy to deny any enemy's reinforcements. Being deployed in fields with rocks, the forces of technologically advanced race from outer space simply fall over and die under the lit storm of 4 hairless monkeys armed with machine guns. So the gameplay is pretty casual. Or is it? Of course, the developers tried to make the game harder, while keeping the difficulty optional. Some of their attempts were genuinely good, like Predator Strain, which is a Terminid sub-faction that replaces Hunters and Stalkers with a much faster variants, easily outrunning even a Helldiver in light armor. Or towns, cities and cave systems, which finally reduce the amount of free space, thus spicing battles against Bugs and Illuminate a bit. But unfortunately, the most recent additions to the game prove that Arrowhead doesn't know how to properly mix difficulty and fun together. Introducing Loadout Check, a type of enemies that requires you to bring specific gear to properly deal with it, and it's generally an awful idea for the game where people tend to play alone. Let's imagine a situation where you're being chased by a group of enemies that can be damaged only with some anti-tank weapons, and all you have is a machine gun. Well, no worries, I have a friend with a recoilless rifle. By the way, where is he? So you bring explosive weapons against the underground Rapture Strain, or you're very likely to die. You bring lock-on rocket launchers and fireproof armor against flying dragon roaches, or you most definitely die. All 4 players bring the anti-tank kits against Hive Lord, the first true boss fight in the game, or you will absolutely ignore it completely. To be fair, it is fun to create a right loadout by trial and error, and then blast this annoyances to pieces, but once you figure it out, there is basically nothing to improve on. Is it really skillful to choose paper over and over again, knowing well that your enemy always picks rock? Before the Unjust update, I actually praised Leviathans, another loadout check type enemy of the Illuminate faction, because they were also dumb, but a very welcome bump in difficulty for an otherwise lackluster faction. But seeing this loadout checks becoming uncomfortably more common, I unfortunately have to take my words back and say no to them. and then they nerfed them all.
Hey, I've seen this one. This is a classic. Definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing over and over again, expecting shit to change.
It's hard to say anything about the future of Helldivers 2. During this year and a half, the game turned into a sandbox of different modern and futuristic armament, successfully perfecting the power fantasy subgenre, and I think this is its biggest achievement. For the entire time of Helldivers 2 existence, the developers have proven multiple times that they can fix their own mistakes, that their stream of ideas is far from running dry, and that they are able to support the game for years to come. But it's impossible to guess which of these ideas can be implemented without upsetting its core casual audience or without dropping spaghetti code. I can't argue with the fact that, for example, Deep Rock Galactic patches come with bugs inside too, but deep gameplay, an abundance of endgame content, grants Ghost Ship games an invaluable resource: time. They can allow themselves to spend months on ironing out new content, without any fears that their player base would run away. Arrowhead, though, like a tardy young mother, buys more and more toys to calm down her whiny and spoiled kid as fast as possible. They have to pump the game headlong with new, sometimes quite undercooked content, while introducing some brand new bugs and turning the constant development process of a live service game into a vicious cycle. But for now, Helldivers 2 was, and still is, a good, entertaining co-op shooter which you can play once in a week in the company of friends and genuinely have a good time. If only you don't have a high-end PC, of course. Arrowhead has radically changed its priorities, putting above all else fun. The fun of feeling your character's power. Unfortunately, in order to do so, the developers had to sacrifice a much more subtle form of fun. The fun of self-improvement. The fun of developing your own skill. Which is ironic, considering the studio motto. But hey, if the result brings you joy, then why not? Otherwise, I wouldn't have played for more than 600 hours already. As a power fantasy shooter, I have to admit, Helldivers 2 is awesome. Is it the best live service game? Only time will tell. Is it the best co-op shooter? Absolutely not.
Mushroom!